But what I was meant to say was, there was a moment, and these insights, they just come. You clear out the beliefs, you clear out the victimhood, you clear out that it should have been different, then there's a kind of a transparency, and in that transparency or clarity, those deep-seated patterns, they just come up. They're just, it's like a whole film just like unfurls right in front of you. And it's out of time and space. And you just get it. And so it was like that with my mother. I thought, it was a great act of love that she modeled a life that was fearful and powerless. Great act of love. Great dance, great lineup, Mom. Thank you. It was a great one. Because I, as a personality, always did the opposite. I wasn't afraid. I did this, I did that, whether it was sensible or not, I just, whatever, I just didn't have a lot of fear. And I just grabbed life, right? So I didn't think I was anything, like my mother, until I really saw what she gave to me, and also the subtle absorptions that I didn't even know that were there, because I was taking the opposite behavior. So it isn't like you're a bad person if you've had a difficult family environment. It just means that there's something there that is like the mirror, it reflects. And mostly it reflects something that's really mostly deeply buried. Some of you have the great good fortune of having these wonderful parents, and they're loving and supportive and kind and cool. Enjoy. But, if you've come in a difficult kind of environment, then that's equally loving. Not loving in our identification of what loving means, but loving in the very best possible circumstances for you to find resolution in what has not been resolved. And so you're not being victimized, it's actually love, this infinite, unconditional love that is bringing forth the perfect dance partner. That you can see what has not been resolved. It's perfectly in place. I was having a conversation with this woman, powerful woman, powerful, powerhouse. I mean, she can make anything happen, And she has a husband that is, extremely critical and extremely, you can never do anything right, and doesn't hear her and doesn't see her, and, on and on and on. And I really don't even know her very well, but I've talked to her a couple of times, and each time, and it causes her, and it's the same story, and each time she just has, she's really suffering in it. So I have learned through the years mostly to keep my mouth shut, because people really don't want to hear, well, have you looked at? Doesn't work usually. But it was so clear, and she had told me about her relationship with her father. Guess what? Perfect replica. Perfect. Couldn't have been more perfect. So I gave my little story that I've told many, many times before, but it set me free, and it set my husband Nate free at the same time. And it was the only time I had a personal question that I ever asked Anja. And I said, how do I deal with not being seen, not being recognized, not being heard? And of course, that was my childhood pattern, right? I was just sort of this little ghost in the house, and did my chores. And that was pretty much it, or got, corrected in something I didn't do right. Mostly I just escaped when I could, right? Because I had a very rich interior world, and I read books all the time, and I was quite intuitive and clairvoyant, and it was really quite interesting. It was very helpful, to be lifted up out of my family, actually. So I had a refuge. But he said, you have to take it home. So we were in a little trailer on a member of the Sangha, Vajra Sangha, and up above in the Santa Cruz Mountains. But it was little. I mean, we didn't have any room. And for 10 days, it burnt. It burnt. All the rage, all the neglect, all the unfairness of the genders, especially in my generation, it just burnt for solid for 10 days. And Nate got it at this point, leave her alone. He didn't try to change it. He didn't try to do anything. He just left me alone. And when I came through, we only had maybe 1 or 2 fights a year, and it was always the same thing. It never changed. And when I came through that, when I took back what I wanted him to do for me and other people to do for me, which he could have never done. It was an impossible situation, right? It just could have never happened. So it took the pressure off of him of not being, what I needed and wanted, which was something that was not filled here. And it changed our relationship totally. It changed everything. So what is within is reflected without. Now I really, I get after him sometimes when he fades out. He really doesn't want to listen to me. He'd rather read his magazine or whatever, I get that, I can be that way too. But it doesn't bother me if no one really wants to listen to me. That's their issue. That belongs to them. It's all an interior show. It's all interior. And if you're sitting on your high horse and you're judging everything around you and it seems really right on and relevant, you might want to look at that. If you're always the one that knows and is in the right and everyone else is a dummy and they just don't have the right stream of information, you might want to look at that. If you're in a relationship and the same thing keeps on coming up, you've changed partners and lovers and jobs and environment, you've moved around, and you take your internal world around wherever you are, and you project that. And that's your world. One of the great privileges, really, of doing a self-retreat here, and I've done several over the years, and I think it's just, I don't know what it is. Ani could probably describe it. But the visions are really extraordinary. They just happen here. I don't know why. And but one of the visions was I could see, and I've seen it before, but I just saw it like in Technicolor and, the vastness of being. There was not one thing in form that was not a mind-driven image. Not one thing. Have you seen that? Not one thing. The table, this floor, that balcony, the tonkas. It was sort of interesting. I thought, I wonder what my house looks like. Because it was all also created by mind images, right? And I looked into the interior of the house, and I could see it was all created by interior. It was by mind image. The whole thing. We're in this holographic, image-formed world that we tend to see as solid and real. So every interior thought, known and not known, is thought driven, and it forms images, and it forms your life. And then you say, that's true. A little scary, but also unbelievably freeing and liberating. And the more that looking, the more authentic, the more humble, the more complete that looking, the more transparent and clear and non-hindered. And then the pure awareness, the natural state, your divineness, actually then can shine through. And then it creates itself from that pure clarity. In my own experience, and I always felt like I had, 4 trains of karma. I look around at all these people, they get it, and they go, oh, that's cool. Life is good. There's no problem. I'm just like, on my knees with stuff, coming up, and the pain, and they're, it's like. But it eventually is clearing. It's clear. And now I just observe that things, they just simply are happening. There's no one in there trying to decide, trying to maneuver it, trying to be positive, trying to make things happen, manifest this, manifest that. I don't even think about it. It never even enters here. I'm not saying that's the right thing. I'm just saying this is my experience. So that true being, which is harmony itself, it's harmony. It's not like being positive. It's harmony itself. And as it starts to come through and it's not hindered by control and idealism and spiritual concepts and spiritual ego and, whatever it is that's overlaying. And God doesn't care. It goes, okay, well, if that's the way you want to play that one, I'm here to give it life. It's very neutral. It's very impersonal, really. Or no hindrance, no overlay, spiritual or otherwise. And then the pure isness, the pure essence, shines through. And because it comes from wisdom, because it is the source of love, and it's the source of abundance, that naturally unfolds and follows. And you don't have to grab and control and push and be positive and manifest, and it all is just happening. So even though we've maybe put in 30 or 40 years of deep, deep dedication, of diving into the unconsciousness, the different conditionings that we still define our life by, there's always a deeper level. And I think we were talking about that last night with Ani, is it becomes in collective. So you're not only a channel that's burning up this cultural current that you're, formed by, and the ancestral lineages, the mother lineage, the father lineage. You become a channel for that to clarify and to be free. And you do so for your children and their children, and on it goes. And then there's always this little karmic piece. And it's usually full of shame. Right? Not that. I'm a good human being. And you are. It has nothing to do with you being a good human being or not a good human being. You are innate good, innately good. You just played out a part that you wanted to dive into and make conscious. So maybe you just can't blame your mother or your father or your upbringing or your culture or your gender or whatever it is you like to blame. And there's no blame. It's just what's unconscious and what's conscious. What's conscious sets you free. What's unconscious binds you. It's that simple.